All right, and joining me now is Congressman Luis Gutiérrez, chairman of the Immigration Task Force of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, and Wendy Young, president of Kids in Need of Defense, a group that provides legal representation for unaccompanied children. And Congressman Gutiérrez, I want to start with you. You've been very vocal, very passionate on this issue of these kids. Does it surprise you that the White House is not changing its plans, not having the president actually visit the border, visit the places where these children are being housed while he's in Texas?
Yeah, I think it would be a good idea for the president to see it. I'm sure he's well informed about what's going on. But on the bigger picture of things, I want to make sure that we continue to treat children the way we have organized our judicial system to treat children. You know, it's easy to say that it's not George. I don't blame this on George Bush. It was a democratically controlled House of Representatives, and President Bush that in 2008 signed the legislation, and it was anti-human trafficking law. But you know what? The law is the law. You can't have, on the one hand, leaders of the Republican Party, especially in the House of Representatives, say, oh, you know what? We're not going to do comprehensive immigration reform because we don't trust the president to enforce the law. And then when the president enforces the law and follows the law, when it comes to unaccompanied minors, and the law is very clear, Joy, 72 hours, they've got to be out of the custody of the Border Patrol. They have to be with Health and Human Services. They're supposed to be put in the least restrictive setting. These are children. And if you find a parent, you're supposed to put them with that parent, and you cannot expedite their removal unless, of course, they're Canadian or Mexican, and then you can. So what does that mean, you can't expedite? The law says they have to be given a trial. They have to be brought before a judge. I think that's the right way to treat children. And that was the law. That was the law that we developed before we got into pointing fingers and scapegoating children that are refugees at our border. So I think, look, the president has been correct in stating that this is a humanitarian crisis. He's going to deal with it. I think it's a good idea to have more judges and to expedite the process. I believe, unfortunately, every one of those children and adults that have arrived here are being put in removal proceedings. I believe that most of them will lose their cases. But you know what? The law is the law. And children have to be given their time before a judge and in court. And I don't want to quickly judge, because what if they have a credible fear? What if they should have received asylum? So I don't want to undermine. I want to quicken the process without undermining the rights of those children. I think fundamentally this is America, and we treat children differently.
Yeah, and you know, Wendy Young, the other issue here is because of the situation that's happening in the countries where these children mainly come from, in Guatemala, in Nicaragua and other countries, the United Nations is already starting to look at it and say, you know what, these children should be treated as refugees. And what the United Nations has said is that the U.S. and Mexico should recognize that this is a refugee situation, that they're leaving for some reason, saying, and let's not send them back in a mechanical way, but rather evaluate the reasons that they left their countries. Do you see this as a crisis that is akin to some other refugee crises that we've seen around the world, and should the United States be treating it as such?
Absolutely. I mean, we may not be used to seeing refugee crises in our own back neighborhood, but in fact, that's exactly what this is. These children are fleeing extreme violence in Central America that's very specifically targeting them as children, and it's violence inflicted on them by gangs and narco-traffickers primarily. And, you know, we're used to refugees being in the Middle East or Africa, far away, but we have a responsibility and obligation, as the Congressman said, under our laws to sort out which children need protection and which children can be safely returned home. We can do that through timely, full hearings before immigration judges with children appropriately represented by counsel. Because some kids do need protection. We estimate about half of them need protection in the United States. And we owe it to them as children to sort that out in a timely fashion, but in a fair and objective way.
And Congressman Gutierrez, your colleague Raul Labrador said on Meet the Press that the administration needs to just immediately deport these families. A pretty harsh statement that he made on Meet the Press this weekend. How do you respond to that?
I guess, yeah, my buddy Raul said that it would be, that it was harsh, and then he said it would be difficult. No, Raul, it's not harsh. It's not difficult. It's illegal. It's against the law. It's against the expressed will of the Congress of the United States by people who made a judgment about children. And it's not only the 2008 law. When we created the Department of Homeland Security in 2002, we basically codified a decision, an agreement that was made between the Justice Department and plaintiffs for unaccompanied minors in 1997. It's called Flores-Reno, right? In which we said, we're going to treat children differently. So look, the jurisprudence on this and the history of how America says it's going to treat unaccompanied children when they arrive on our borders is well established. But of course, it was established outside of the Tea Party and outside of those who want to point fingers at what's happening at the border. Look, the president has huge problems to deal with. I hope he goes down to the border. Yes, I do. But I am happy to see that Homeland Security is transferring the children, is spending the time and the money to reunite them with their families. I understand that half of the children are being reunited with their moms and dads. That's a good thing. And then we'll wait for their day in court. I want to expedite the process. I think that's a good idea, having more judges. But at the same time, like Wendy, I'm sure we don't want to undermine the rights that we established for those children in calmer, saner times than the ones we live in today.
Yeah, indeed. And last word to you, Wendy. Do you feel that the administration has handled the situation well, or is there something you think they could be doing differently?
Well, certainly they engaged in an emergency response from the get-go, and that was absolutely necessary. We had to provide for basic care for these children, but now it's time to work towards a comprehensive, full solution so that we protect those children who need it, and we address the root causes in the sending countries so that kids can remain home safely someday.
All right, Congressman Luis Gutierrez and Wendy Young, thank you both.
Thank you.
All right, now to developments in the Middle East, where Israel appears to be